So if I hold up a card with like a red ink blot on it, your brain is automatically going to try to make sense of the shape, right?
Yeah, you might see um, fluttering butterflies or maybe two people dancing, something like that.
Right, exactly. But when researchers held that exact same card up to traumatized war veterans, they didn't see butterflies at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they saw the horrific, bloody deaths of their friends, like comrades being ripped open, and they didn't just remember it.
Their bodies actually reacted.
Yes. Their biology reacted as if they were right back in the war zone, sitting right there in the examination room.
See, that just shatters this comfortable illusion we have. I mean, we tend to view trauma as this extreme exception,
Right.
like something that only happens in disaster movies or on like distant battlefields.
Totally. But the statistics from our sources for today's deep dive proves that is just not true. Like
Right.
1 in 5 Americans was sexually molested as a child. 1 in 4 was beaten by a parent to the point of actually leaving a physical mark.
It's staggering.
It is. And a third of all couples engage in physical violence at some point. Trauma is literally happening in our neighborhoods, our homes, and, the cubicle right next to yours.
And that's exactly our mission for this deep dive today. We're looking at excerpts from Dr. Bessel Kolk's groundbreaking work, The Body Keeps the Score.
Such a fascinating source.
It really is. We are going to decode the literal biology of survival. We'll explore how trauma isn't just a bad memory stored in some mental filing cabinet. It's an actual physical rewiring of the brain and nervous system.
Which flips everything upside down.
Exactly. We need to understand why traditional talking cures and medications so often fail the people who need them most, and how healing actually requires this profound reconnection between the mind and the body.
Yeah, reading through this material, it just fundamentally changes how you view human behavior. I mean, for over a century, the absolute gold standard for mental distress was to just get on a therapist's couch and talk it out.
Right? The old psychoanalysis approach.
Yeah. The assumption was like if you could just construct a logical narrative out of your pain, you could process it and move on.
But we have to look directly at the neurobiology to understand the fatal flaw in that approach. There's this case study in the text about a man named Bill.
Oh, the Vietnam medic.
Yeah, Bill the medic. So a decade after returning home, Bill has built this seemingly normal life. He's married, working as a parish priest, and he just had a newborn baby.
Sounds like he moved on.
Right. But one afternoon, his wife leaves him alone with the baby for the first time. The baby starts crying, and instantly, Bill is hallucinating.
Just from the cry.
Just from the crying. He is physically seeing and hearing dying children from the war zone right there in his living room.
That's terrifying. And to understand what is biologically happening to Bill, the sources bring up another patient, Marcia. She tragically lost her 5-year-old daughter in a terrible car crash.
Oh, the fMRI study.
Yes. Years later, researchers placed Marcia in an fMRI machine. And for those who don't know, that's a scanner that maps blood flow and oxygen use in the brain in real time. So you can literally watch the brain process information.
It's amazing technology.
It really is. So they played an audio recording that recreated the sounds of her accident.
And the results of that scan, I mean, they represent a complete watershed moment
Yeah.
in modern neuroscience.
Right.
The second Marcia's trauma was triggered by the audio, her amygdala, which is the brain's deep-seated fear and threat detection center. It just lit up with massive blood flow.
Her heart rate spiked, blood pressure jumped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Biologically, she wasn't in a scanner anymore. Her body was back in the twisting metal of that car crash.
But the most shocking part wasn't what lit up, right? It was what went totally dark.
Broca's area.
Yes, a region in the left frontal lobe called Broca's area literally lost blood flow and just went completely offline. And Broca's area is the speech center of the brain. It's the specific neurological hardware that allows us to, put our thoughts and feelings into words.
And that shutdown is heavily localized. During a flashback, the right hemisphere of the brain activates powerfully.
The intuitive side.
Right, the side that handles visual, emotional, and spatial information. It holds all the sights and sounds and the physical terror of the memory. But the left hemisphere, which handles logical sequencing, facts, language,
It just shuts down.
it shuts down entirely. And the left brain is what allows you to say, hey, that terrifying event happened in the past, and I am safe now.
So when that left hemisphere goes dark, you literally lose the concept of time. It is speechless horror. Trying to talk someone out of a trauma response is Well, it's like trying to turn off a blaring fire alarm by reading it an instruction manual.
That's a perfect analogy.
The language receiver is just physically broken.
Because the alarm system of the brain doesn't process English vocabulary. It only processes survival cues.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. If the speech center of the brain physically shuts down during a traumatic memory, how did talk therapy survive as the default treatment for an entire century? Were therapists just like talking to a brick wall?
Basically, yes. But they were working with the tools they had. For a very long time, we didn't have fMRI machines to show us the blood flow.
That makes sense.
Psychology just assumed the rational thinking part of the brain, that top layer, was always sitting in the driver's seat. What the imaging technology finally proved is that the brain actually works from the bottom up.
Right.
When language fails, the evolutionary architecture beneath it just takes over completely.
And the sources break this architecture down into 3 distinct evolutionary levels, which is super helpful.
Yeah, it really clarifies things.
At the very bottom, right where the brain meets the spinal cord, you have the reptilian brain. This is like the oldest hardware. It manages basic, unconscious housekeeping. Breathing, core temperature, waking, eating, eliminating waste.
And then sitting right above that housekeeping layer is the mammalian or limbic brain.
The emotion center.
Exactly. It evolved to help mammals navigate herd dynamics. It monitors for danger, judges what's pleasurable or scary, and rapidly processes all that raw data of survival.
And then on top of all that,
Finally, wrapped around the outside is the neocortex, the youngest part of the brain, the part that handles rational thought, empathy, and understanding context.
the text gives us 3 brilliant characters to visualize how these parts interact, and I love this. It calls them the cook, the smoke detector, and the watchtower.
It's such a great framework.
So let's walk through the mechanism. When sensory information like, say, the smell of smoke or a loud bang comes into your brain, it first hits a structure called the thalamus. The thalamus is the cook.
Okay.
Its job is to take all these raw sensory ingredients and blend them into a coherent soup, a unified experience of this is what is happening right now.
And then the cook passes that sensory soup in 2 different directions. It sends it down to the amygdala, which acts as the smoke detector.
Right.
The smoke detector's only job is to ask one single question. Is this a threat to my survival? And it processes this information lightning fast. It's the low, fast road.
Meanwhile, the cook also sends that exact same information up the high road to the medial prefrontal cortex. That's the watchtower.
The logical brain.
Exactly. The watchtower looks down at the situation from a higher logical perspective. It can analyze the sensory soup and say, hey, that loud bang isn't a gunshot, it's just a car backfiring. Stand down.
But the crucial biological detail here is speed. The signal reaches the smoke detector several milliseconds before it reaches the watchtower.
So the alarm goes off first.
Always. If the amygdala senses danger, it doesn't wait for permission from the logical brain. It immediately fires off stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to prepare your body to fight or run.
Now, in a healthy brain, the watchtower eventually catches up and sends an all-clear signal to turn the alarm off. But in trauma, that delicate balance is shattered.
Completely shut.
The sources share the story of a couple, Stan and Ute, to show how differently this broken alarm system can present. So they were driving together in dense fog and got trapped in a horrific 87-car highway pileup.
87 cars. Just unimaginable.
They were physically stuck in their car while vehicles smashed into them from all sides. Months later, researchers put both of them into brain scanners and played an audio recreation of the crash.
And Stan's scan showed his smoke detector going into absolute overdrive.
Just totally lit up.
Yeah. But crucially, his dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the watchtower that tells us an event's firmly in the past, went completely offline.
Then he was reliving it.
His brain wasn't remembering the crash. It was frantically trying to escape a crash that it believed was happening at that exact millisecond.
Wow. But Ute Kai's was entirely different. When researchers looked at her fMRI, it was almost completely blank. Practically every area of her brain showed decreased activity.
No spiked heart rate.
Nothing. Her heart rate didn't elevate at all. When they asked her what she experienced during the audio, she said, I felt just like I felt at the time of the accident. I felt nothing.
Which is wild. We have to ask why 2 people sitting inches apart in the exact same wrecked car would have completely opposite biological reaction.
Right. One explodes into panic and the other just vanishes into total numbness.
The answer lies in what their nervous systems learned about survival long before that highway pileup ever happened.
Because Stan's brain tried to escape the crashing cars, failed, and simply kept looping that thwarted escape attempt as relentless fight-or-flight panic.
Exactly. But Ute had grown up enduring severe childhood emotional abuse. When her mother would relentlessly yell at her, Ute learned that fighting back was impossible, and running away wasn't an option either.
So she was trapped.
Right. Her only viable survival mechanism as a child was to completely dissociate, to depersonalize. She literally trained her biology to make her mind go blank and cut off all physical sensation.
That's heartbreaking.
So decades later, when faced with an inescapable 87-car pileup, her brain bypassed panic and automatically defaulted to the only extreme survival strategy it knew. It just pulled the plug on the entire system.
It's deeply unsettling to realize your brain can just choose to erase you from your own body like that.
It really is.
Because the medical community was constantly seeing patients presenting with these extreme, unlogical biological reactions, either exploding into panic or collapsing into severe numbness. They realized talking wasn't working.
So they turned to the next logical tool.
Right. Trying to chemically shut the alarm off. Here's where it gets really interesting.
To understand the dark side of that pharmacological shift, we have to look at some foundational animal research by scientists Mayer and Seligman. It's about inescapable shock.
Okay.
They placed dogs into locked cages and repeatedly administered painful electric shocks through the floor.
And initially, the dogs react exactly how you'd expect, right? They run around frantically barking, trying to find a way out of the cage.
Yeah. But eventually, they realized the cage is locked, the shocks are inescapable, so the dogs just gave up. They lay down on the floor and whimpered, just accepting the pain.
Which is awful, but what happened next is the crazy part.
Right. Here is the critical paradigm-shifting finding. When the researchers finally unlocked the cages, opened the doors wide, and shocked the floor again, the dogs didn't run away.
You just lay there.
They just lay there. They had to be physically dragged out of the open cages to learn that escape was actually possible again.
Yeah.
They had been biologically conditioned into learned helplessness.
And humans do the exact same thing. When trauma is inescapable, we get stuck in that learned helplessness. We adapt to the numbness.
Yeah.
And this creates a terrifying loop where traumatized people can become biologically addicted to their own trauma. The text mentions a patient named Sherry who compulsively picked her skin until she bled, and another patient, Julia, who was brutally abused but just kept returning to a highly violent pimp.
See, from the outside, returning to an abuser seems completely irrational. But look at the chemistry. When the body is under extreme stress, it releases endorphins.
The body's natural painkillers.
Exactly. They're endogenous morphine-like chemicals that block pain and provide a rush.
Yeah.
If a traumatized person's baseline state is Eudene's total dissociation, just feeling absolutely nothing, dead inside, then activities that cause extreme fear or physical pain become the only way to trigger an endorphin release.
Oh, wow. So they are paradoxically seeking out terror because it's the only way their brain can feel alive.
They develop a literal chemical dependency on chaos.
So pharmacology steps in. Drugs like Prozac are invented.
Yeah.
And the sources are fair here. They do acknowledge that these drugs can be genuinely helpful. They can dampen the amygdala's smoke detector just enough to give a patient the breathing room they need to function.
Right, they have a place.
But treating trauma purely as a chemical imbalance is like cutting the wire to a blinking check engine light. I mean, the red light stops flashing, so the cabin is peaceful, but the engine is still fundamentally broken. You are taking the power completely away from the patient and treating them like a defective machine.
And the sources highlight just how tragic this brain disease model can become when it's taken to its extreme. There has been this deeply disturbing trend where Medicaid heavily over-medicates abused and neglected foster children with powerful antipsychotic drugs.
It's just nuts.
The underlying trauma isn't being healed. The biological goal of the medication is simply to make the children tractable, to make them compliant, quiet, and manageable for the system.
But the biological cost is devastating. By aggressively dampening the brain's reward and arousal systems, these drugs destroy a child's curiosity, their playfulness, and their capacity to feel joy.
Yeah.
Those aren't just personality traits. Play and curiosity are the fundamental mechanisms mammals use to learn and grow into functioning adults. We are chemically straitjacketing them.
So, if words fail because the speech center goes dark and drugs just cut the wire to the alarm system while robbing you of your humanity, how do we actually heal the underlying engine?
That's the million-dollar question.
The sources point to a radically different approach. Bottom-up physical recalibration.
Which brings us to the polyvagal theory. developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. It actually builds on observations made by Charles Darwin about something called the pneumogastric nerve.
Pneumogastric is an older term for what we now call the vagus nerve. Vagus means wanderer in Latin, and it is this massive physical highway of nerves that originates in the brainstem.
It wanders all over.
It really does. It wanders down through your facial muscles, your vocal cords, into your lungs, your heart, and all the way down into your gut. It is the core of your autonomic nervous system, the system that regulates all your unconscious bodily functions.
So Porges realized that this nerve pathway dictates 3 distinct levels of biological safety. Level 1 is social engagement. This is governed by the ventral branch of the vagus nerve, which connects to the face and heart. When we feel safe, this nerve physically changes our biology. It softens our eye contact, allows us to smile, and literally tunes our inner ear to pick up the frequency of human voices. We are biologically connected to the tribe.
But if social engagement fails, say no one hears us cry for help or a predator appears, we drop to level 2, fight or flight.
The panic mode.
Right. This is the sympathetic nervous system taking over. Adrenaline pumps, the heart races, and blood rushes to our muscles so we can battle the threat or sprint away.
And if fight or flight is blocked, like Stan and Ute trapped in the wrecked car, or a child pinned down by an abuser, we drop to the ultimate emergency backup, level 3. Freeze or collapse.
The dissociation.
Exactly. This is the dorsal branch of the vagus nerve. It drastically drops your heart rate, stops your digestion, and shuts down your awareness to preserve whatever minimal energy it can. It's basically playing dead.
Polyvagal theory reveals that trauma occurs when the social engagement system fails and the fight or flight response is thwarted.
So the energy is just stuck.
The body's energy has nowhere to discharge, so it gets trapped. The person is forced into a permanent biological state of either hypervigilance, like Stan's racing heart, or absolute collapse, like Ute's numbness.
So what does this all mean for the listener? You've probably felt a microversion of this yourself. Think about the last time you had a screaming match with your partner, or you were backed into a corner in a highly stressful work meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
You get so furious or overwhelmed that your watchtower goes offline. You literally can't find your words. Your heart is pounding. You have dropped into level 2, fight or flight.
And because the problem rooted in the physical nervous system, the healing has to start there too. You cannot outlogic a racing heart.
Right.
But you can use breathing, movement, and physical rhythm to manually tug on the vagus nerve and send signals of safety back up to the brain.
The sources illustrate this beautifully with the story of a man named Steve Gross. He was working in a clinic waiting room filled with angry, traumatized, frozen kids. He didn't sit them down, point to a chair, and say, "Tell me about your deepest pain."
Which wouldn't work anyway.
Right. Their Broca's areas were likely offline anyway. Instead, he just walked around the room bouncing a brightly colored beach ball. He'd accidentally, on purpose, drop it near a kid, give it a gentle, rhythmic nudge toward them, and wait.
And eventually.
Eventually, the kid would push it back.
See, that sounds like just a simple game. But biologically, it is a profound intervention. By establishing a physical rhythm, the back and forth of the ball, the visual tracking, the subtle motor matching, he was gently coaxing their nervous systems out of the freeze state.
He was bypassing the language center entirely.
Exactly. The rhythm physically reassures the amygdala. He was reawakening their ventral vagal social engagement system, connecting them to another human being without demanding a single word.
It makes total sense. Taking a deep, long exhale literally pulls on the vagus nerve to apply a physical brake to your heart rate. Moving in rhythm with other people, whether it's tossing a beach ball, doing martial arts, dancing, or even singing in a choir, it physically recalibrates the nervous system. It tells the smoke detector the war is over, which allows the rational watchtower to finally come back online.
It proves that human physiology is not a closed loop. We biologically regulate each other. The micro-expressions on a kind face, the soothing cadence of a voice, a physical rhythm shared with another person. These aren't just nice social concepts.
Yeah.
They are biological imperatives for safety.
The body truly keeps the score. I mean, the trauma isn't just a memory. It is a physical imprint on the nervous system that alters how we perceive the entire world.
Right.
We cannot simply outthink a traumatized brain because the rational watchtower is held hostage by the primitive smoke detector.
Right.
Healing requires physical safety. It requires rhythmic connection. It requires the restoration of reciprocity, the visceral bodily feeling of being truly seen, heard, and held by your tribe.
And that biological reality leaves us with a highly provocative question about how we live today.
Oh, definitely.
The sources make it undeniably clear that our nervous systems require physical, face-to-face cues, vocal rhythms, eye contact, microexpressions to feel safe. But look at the modern world.
It's all screens.
We are increasingly replacing physical reciprocity with disembodied text-based communication. We stare at screens, we send emails, we scroll through feeds alone in our rooms. We really have to ask ourselves, by removing the physical cues of safety that our biology evolved to crave, are we inadvertently starving our own vagus nerves?
Wow.
Are we trapping an entire society in a low-level, chronic state of biological isolation and hypervigilance?
That is a chilling thought. If our nervous systems are literally starving for rhythm and connection, a text message simply isn't going to feed it.
Not at all.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. As you go about the rest of your day, try an experiment. Take a deep breath and make your exhale twice as long as your inhale. Feel that physical break apply to your heart rate. Put down the screens and look for a chance to genuinely connect with someone face to face. After all, if your body is treating everyday stress like a blaring fire alarm, you owe it to yourself to put down the instruction manual and focus on the physical world around you. Catch you next time.